and welcome. You're watching News Central Television. I am Judith at TV. Here are the stories making headlines just beyond the continent. And we'll begin the news from China, where government authorities have vowed to fight to the end after President Donald Trump threatened new tariffs of 50% on Chinese goods. This marks a dangerous escalation in the trade war, which has already caused massive global market losses. Despite mounting economic pressure, Trump has ruled out pausing his aggressive trade policy. Now, in response, Beijing announced its own 34% duties on U.S. imports set to take effect Thursday. Trump warned of further levies if China retaliates, potentially pushing tariffs on Chinese goods to a staggering 104%. China has strongly rejected Washington's tactics, calling them pressure threats and blackmail, and urged the U.S. to engage with equality, respect, and mutual benefit in any future negotiations.
我要再次强调，贸易战、关税战没有赢家，保护主义没有出路。中国人不惹事，也不怕事。施压、威胁和讹诈不是同中方打交道的正确方式。中方必将采取必要措施，坚决维护自身正当合法权益。如果美方置两国和国际社会的利益于不顾，执意打关税战、贸易战，中方必将奉陪到底。
Malaysia's Prime Minister Anwar Ibrahim is urging Asian nations to strengthen trade within the region as Southeast Asian finance ministers gather in Kuala Lumpur to discuss a response to President Trump's sweeping tariffs. Anwar, who emphasized that the global trade system is under strain, warning that, quote, while the barrage of tariffs is sweeping across the world in fast and furious fashion, we are witnessing the fraying of the global order, end quote. He called for regional unity and deeper cooperation to address the growing economic challenges brought on by the escalating trade war.
While the barrage of tariffs sweeping across the world in fast and furious fashion, we are witnessing the fraying of the global order. Therefore, ASEAN must rely more on itself. This means strengthening inter-ASEAN trade. We must move beyond rhetoric to execution.
The top U.S. trade official on Tuesday defended President Donald Trump's sweeping tariffs on nearly every other nation, telling U.S. senators almost 50 countries had reached out to make a deal. Jamieson Greer's appearance in Congress came with Republicans ringing alarm bells over Trump's escalating trade war and Wall Street clamoring for clarity on the president's plans after a historic market sell-off. The U.S. Trade Representative argued that the strategy was, quote, already bearing fruit, end quote.
Been a haphazard. Things go into price. I know you think I'm probably like dodging and weaving on this, but I'm looking at data, sir.
Yeah.
And
nothing was thought out about this. This has been a haphazard, incompetent effort, and it's showing. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
I'd like to focus on one central question. What is the
things go into price? I know you think I'm probably like dodging and weaving on this, but I'm looking at data, sir.
Yeah.
And
Nothing was thought out about this. This has been a haphazard, incompetent effort.
For more on this, I'm joined by international correspondent Afia Hagen. Afia, how have the markets closed today ahead of Trump's tariff coming into full force tomorrow?
Well, when we spoke earlier on today, the markets were having a better day. Certainly, European markets are closed now, and they closed mostly up, mostly ending the day up. The FTSE 100, the index of the largest firms here in the UK, closed up 2.7%, but it's still hovering around levels that we haven't seen since this time last year. It sunk over 8.1% in total because of this tariff announcement. The German DAX closed closed up 2.5%. The French markets closed up 2.5%. But both of them remain so much lower than the start of this month. Now, trading is still going on in the US. Trading soared at the beginning of Tuesday. Sessions were high in the early afternoon. The Dow was up 375 points. That's about 1%. The S&P gained 500, that was about 0.6%. The tech-heavy NASDAQ composite as well, that was 0.5%. Some of them surged as much as 4 to 4.5% around lunchtime because there was basically people thought maybe the tariffs might be delayed. Then the White House press secretary Caroline Leavitt spoke to reporters and said that Trump was absolutely adamant he was going to bring in another 50% tariff on China, making their tariff potentially 104%, and stocks wavered and came back down again. So that surge completely lost, and they're trading much closer to where they were on Monday. You so rightly said the tariffs come into effect at 1 minute past midnight American time. So let's see how the markets look tomorrow morning.
Is there any chance that there could be a pause on these tariffs coming into effect tomorrow?
Well, the White House press secretary did give a briefing in the last couple of hours, and she has said fundamentally no, there will be no pause. There's lots of countries doing their own negotiation. We had Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu of Israel negotiating yesterday with the White House. The Italian Prime Minister is going to be in the country next week doing their negotiations. Vietnam has said possibly zero tariffs. Lesotho as well have sent their delegation. Look, there is a lot, of negotiation going on, but the tariffs will come into play at 1 minute past midnight. What could happen is you could see lower tariffs over the few weeks as more countries negotiate. But President Trump, his White House and his team are adamant that the tariffs will come into play at 1 minute past midnight at those rates that you saw on that card that the president had last week in the White House Rose Garden, all those different countries and all those different numbers on them, 50% for some countries, 10% for others. They will come into play.
And China is remaining determined not to back down over what they say is economic bullying from the U.S. What's the latest on their stance?
Yeah, absolutely. China have said, look, if you are going to impose heavy tariffs on us, we are going to do the same, and they have every right to do so. And the one thing that China wants is to show strength. They are in no way want to seem weak. They don't want to back down. They do not want to capitulate to the United States. The United States are going to put another 50% tariff on their goods because of the retaliatory tariffs that China have imposed. Could we see China slapping a huger tariff again in retaliation? That could happen tomorrow or the day after. We just don't know. But China will not back down. They are calling this economic bullying. They are saying this is the blackmail nature of the United States. That's a quote. They've also said that they will fight to the end. Chinese state-owned firms have backed this decision of the Chinese government. And Chinese people seem to be backing this decision as well, saying that they should not back down. So at the moment, we will not see any rollback from China. But like I said, these tariffs come into play 1 minute past midnight. You could see 104% tariffs on some Chinese goods. So if that comes into play, maybe they will change their mind, but it doesn't look like that's going to happen at the moment.
Well, interesting times, just hours away from us. But Afia, many thanks for doing this with us. We appreciate you for coming on. Afia Hagen, giving us a bit of insight following the tariff hike and the U.S.-China trade wars. We'll switch gears and head up to north from the U.S., where Canada, they're all heading to the polls in a snap federal election in just a matter of weeks. Prime Minister Mark Carney, who was a former two-time central banker, is leading the charge for the Liberal Party, while the opposition Conservative Party leader is equally looking to seize the opportunity to emerge Canada's new head of government. Now, for both men, it's Its two main questions, which is, can Canada stomach an all-out war trade with the U.S. in light of President Donald Trump's newly imposed tariff, and does Canada have space enough to keep its doors flung wide open for more immigrants? Earlier, we're joined by Canadian politician Ayo Owudumi. He is a city councillor for the Kitchener's Ward 5 in Ontario, and he gave us a bit of insight into the subject. Take a look.
There are so many factors that we need to look at when we think about and talk about this election. Number one, we need to think about our friendly neighbors down south, or our former friendly neighbors down south, the United States, and the tariff wars that are currently taking place and the back and forth. So that is a critical issue right now. And when you talk to an average Canadian, that is the biggest issue that they're thinking about. Who is going to be able to stand up against Donald Trump? Who's going to be able to stand tit for tat and have those conversations with him and be able to push back? That's number one. Number two, we also need to revive our economy. Right now, with the tariffs in the Waterloo region, the area that I stay, which city of Kitchener is under, we're projecting probably about 22 to 23,000 jobs that could be lost simply through this tariff wars, which requires us now, who are other parties that we can start marketing with, partnering with, having relations with as well. So we're looking towards Europe and different continents beyond just the United States at this point as well. So this is a critical issue, and as we talked about, immigration is a big issue as well. Depending on which party goes in, the policies will change significantly. And you have a lot of colleges that depend on the international students' tuition that is coming in to fund their schools. So what happens if that is shut down? A lot of schools might end up having to fold up. There are many that are actually laying off staff members right now. As a counselor, you get all those emails and updates regularly, and that was something that we received as well. So there's so many factors that are coming into play at this point in time. The economy, our neighbors down south, the tariff wars, our businesses. We're just hoping for the best in this situation.
Hopes for peace in the Middle East has heightened as Iran's top diplomat said his country believes a new nuclear deal could be agreed with the United States. Foreign Minister Abbas Araghchi, who believes a new nuclear deal could be agreed with the United States if there is sufficient goodwill in the peace talks scheduled to begin in Oman on Saturday. Abbas Araghchi said that Iran's principal aim remained the lifting of U.S. sanctions, which has dealt a heavy blow to the Iranian economy. Now, Trump made the surprise announcement that his administration would open talks with Iran during a White House meeting with Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu.
و اگر که طرف مقابل اراده واقعی داشته باشه از نظر ما توافق قابل حصول است. بنابراین طبق اون عبارت معروفی که وجود داره توپ در زمین آمریکاست. اگر با اراده واقعی به عمان بیان حتما به نتیجه میرسه. مذاکرات همونطور که اعلام شد و من هم دیشب تا یه توییتی اعلام کردم روز شنبه برگزار خواهد شد در عمان. مذاکرات غیر مستقیم خواهد بود. ما شیوه دیگه‌ای رو برای مذاکره نمیپذیریم که مذاکره شکلش مهم نیست، مستقیم یا غیر مستقیم. من توضیح میدم. البته به نظر من اونچه که اهمیت داره مؤثر بودن یا غیر مؤثر بودن مذاکرات هست، جدی بودن یا جدی نبودن طرفین در مذاکرات هست، نیات طرفین در مذاکره هست و اراده برای رسیدن به یک راه حل. این هست که در مذاکره و در هر گفتگویی.
Meanwhile, Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu has warned that military option will be inevitable against Iran if talks with the United States on its nuclear program drag on. Netanyahu made this known in a video statement following his meeting with U.S. President Donald Trump in Washington. We'll bring you that report in our subsequent bulletin. Well, here are key points on the U.S.-Iran relations. Number one, the relations has been strained since the 1979 Iranian Revolution and U.S. Embassy hostage crisis. Number two, nuclear program disputes. Now, Iran's nuclear ambitions have been a major point of contention. The third is that in 2015, the Iran nuclear deal was abandoned by the U.S. in 2018 under Trump. Now, attempts to revive it have been since slow and inconsistent. The U.S. has continued to impose heavy sanctions on Iran, targeting its economy, especially oil exports, banking, and military sectors. Now, regional proxy conflicts also play into this, as Iran supports proxy groups across the Middle East like Hezbollah in Lebanon, Houthis in Yemen, and the militias in Iraq, and Syria, putting it at odds with U.S. interests and allies like Israel and Saudi Arabia. Let's move now to Israel, where Israel's Supreme Court has begun hearing on the legality of Prime Minister Netanyahu's decision to dismiss Ronen Bar, head of the Shin Bet Internal Security Agency. Now, the dismissal, announced on March 21st, cited a breakdown in trust, with Bar required to step down by April 10th. The court hearing followed legal challenges from opposition parties and non-profits who questioned the legality of the move. Previously, the court had frozen the dismissal until a decision was made. Let's go on a short break, shall we? When we return, Russian parliament approved security treaty with Iran. We have the details just after the break. Join us again. Welcome back. Russia's lower house of parliament, the State Duma, on Tuesday ratified a 20-year strategic partnership between Russia and Iran. The strategic partnership document was signed by Russian President Vladimir Putin and his Iranian counterpart on January 17th and represented a deepening of military ties between the countries. In the treaty, the sides agreed to help each other counter common security threats, but it stops short of a mutual defense pact like the one signed between Russia and North Korea last year.
Договор выводит отношения России с Ираном на уровень всеобъемлющего стратегического партнерства, нацелен на углубление кооперации по широкому спектру приоритетных для двух стран направлений построения справедливой многополярной международной системы.
Именно в эту минуту мы заключаем это соглашение о всеобъемлющем стратегическом партнерстве. Это сотрудничество в сферах политики, обороны, безопасности, экономики, торговли, финансов, инвестиций, транспорта.
President Volodymyr Zelensky on Tuesday said that Ukrainian troops had captured 2 Chinese citizens fighting alongside Russian forces. Zelensky, who disclosed this in a joint press briefing with Belgian Prime Minister, added that Kyiv would demand an explanation from Beijing and a reaction from its allies. Moscow and Beijing have in recent years boosted or boasted of their no-limits partnership and deepened political, military and economic cooperation since Russia invaded Ukraine in February of 2022. There was no immediate response to the claims from either Moscow or Beijing, but Ukraine's Foreign Minister Andrei Sybiga said on social media that China's charge d'affaires had been summoned for an explanation.
I'm happy to announce that we made a new decision with the new government. We're going to continue, of course, our humanitarian aid. Our Minister of Foreign Affairs, Maxime Prévost, is here. But also our Minister of Defense, who is proud that he can announce a new decision of a 1 billion aid package for 2025, with the ambition to do at minimum 1 billion every year for my term in bilateral military aid, and our minister has a menu.
Meanwhile, Belgian Prime Minister Bart De Wever has publicly condemned Russia, describing its strikes on Ukraine as an attack on the soul of the country. Bart De Wever, he pledged his support for Ukraine while restating that Russia's actions cannot be tolerated.
People are falling or dying here are the same age of my children. It is terrible what has happened to you, the Russian aggression against your country, the attack on the soul of Ukraine, denying your identity, the integrity of your country, breaking every promise they made to you, breaking every treaty they made to you. This is to be condemned. This cannot be tolerated. Ukraine must be supported until the end. There cannot be a peace unless Ukraine...
And off to the UK, where Prince Harry is back in the country, battling a government decision over his personal security arrangements. The Duke of Sussex is appealing a previous court ruling that upheld the UK's government's decision to reduce his security when visiting Britain. News Central's international correspondent Afia Hagen has the details.
Prince Harry appeared at London's Royal Courts of Justice, appealing against a government decision to scale back his security arrangements whilst in the UK. The hearing marks a rare visit to Britain for the Prince, who has spent most of her time in California since stepping back from royal duties in 2020. Following his dramatic exit from the royal family, the British government determined that Harry would no longer receive the same level of taxpayer-funded security previously afforded to him as a working royal. But Harry's legal team argues that the decision was unjustified and poses serious safety concerns. In her opening statement, Harry's lawyer Shahid Fatima told the Court of Appeal that her client is being subjected to unjustified and inferior treatment, claiming the decision to provide bespoke protection fails to meet his safety needs. Fatima argued that the committee responsible for the decision did not properly assess the risks Harry faces. Security concerns are particularly poignant for Harry, whose mother, Princess Diana, was killed in a car crash in 1997 whilst fleeing paparazzi in Paris. Harry has said his safety and that of his family are paramount, noting that his current security arrangements make it difficult for him to return to the UK. Harry has only made brief visits to Britain since relocating to North America, citing security concerns as a major factor. His legal battle began in 2020 after the UK's Interior Ministry and a special committee downgraded his protection status. The High Court ruled last year that the government acted lawfully in its decision. However, a judge recently allowed Harry's case to be brought before the Court of Appeal, where proceedings are expected to conclude on Wednesday. As Harry's legal battle continues, he's also embroiled in another dispute involving the charity he co-founded, Centabale. Allegations of bullying and mismanagement have prompted an investigation by the UK-based charity watchdog. The hearing is expected to conclude on Wednesday, with parts held in private due to security concerns. Whether Harry will be granted greater protection during his visits to the UK remains to be seen. For News Central, I'm Afia Hagen.
And that's all we can take from beyond the continent. It's back to the continent. Now, do remember that you can send us your eyewitness report to the WhatsApp number now showing on the screen. And while you're at it, make sure to follow us on social media. We're at News Central TV on all social media platforms. You can watch News Central live on DSTV channel 422 or on GoTV channel 23. Find us on Star Times or channel 274. We're also on Avo TV. Or better yet, just stream us live on YouTube.